Hi everyone, today we're peeling back the layers of history to explore a side of ancient Egypt that you've probably never heard about. Get ready to be shocked because this is Disturbing History Mysteries. In this episode, we're diving deep into the 10 filthy secrets of ancient Egypt. The Shepherd of the Rear. Alright folks, let's start with something really unique. Imagine you're a doctor, but not your regular doctor. You're more like a special doctor who takes care of a very specific part of the body. We're talking about proctologists, or in ancient Egypt, they called them shepherds of the anus. Yeah, you heard it right, they were like the caretakers for people's bottoms. Now what did these shepherds of the anus do? Well, their main job was to give something called an enema. An enema is like a special treatment for your stomach. The ancient Egyptians believed that these enemas were super important for their health. They thought it was so crucial that they even linked it to a god named Thoth, who they believed gave them this idea. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you were a ruler, like a pharaoh, you'd have these enemas quite often. But it wasn't a glamorous experience. They used special medicines that had castor oil in them, and these made you spend a lot of time in the bathroom. So even kings had their not-so-glamorous moments when it came to their health. It's a reminder that even the most powerful people had to take care of their bodies in unusual ways. So, there you have it, the first fascinating secret of ancient Egypt, the Shepherd of the Rear. These proctologists had a unique job, and it's a reminder that healthcare in the past could be quite different from what we have today. Weird pregnancy tests. Alright folks, get ready for a head-scratcher. In ancient Egypt, pregnancy tests were way different. Instead of pea sticks, they used grains like barley and wheat. If they grew, you were pregnant. Barley meant a boy, wheat meant a girl. They had other odd tests too. Women sometimes had to eat stuff to make them vomit or even put garlic or onions down there to check their breath in the morning. Strange, right? But it worked for them. So in ancient Egypt, it was all about grains, garlic, and onions to know if you were having a baby. Harassment issues. Alright folks, this one's a serious matter. In ancient Egypt, they had a problem treating women right, despite all their other clever ideas. Women faced things like catcalling, whistling, and even flashing during religious festivals by the Nile River. It wasn't good. Imagine going to a festival and instead of having a great time, you had to deal with people being rude or even violent. Sadly, that's what women often went through. They didn't always get the help they needed to stop it. And believe it or not, they had these love potions with weird ingredients to make women fall in love or do what someone wanted. It's like something out of a fantasy story, but it happened for real. So, as much as the ancient Egyptians had smart ideas, they had some not-so-great stuff happening too. Especially for women. It's a reminder that history can have its dark sides. Witness battering program. Alright, moving on to something kinda shocking. In ancient Egypt, they had guards who did some tough stuff. When they needed information, they'd beat suspects, witnesses, and even people close to the suspects. It was really tough, both for the body and the mind. Imagine you saw something or knew something and they wanted to know what it was. These guards didn't ask nicely. They'd use force, which means they'd hurt people to get answers. Witnesses weren't just told to tell the truth, they had to say how they wanted to be punished if they lied. This was to make sure they told the truth, even if it was a bit scary. So, in ancient Egypt, they had a program that involved some tough methods to get information. It's a reminder that in history, things weren't always fair and gentle. The mummification industry. Now let's dive into the mummy business. In ancient Egypt, not everyone got mummified. Only the rich and powerful folks. Imagine you were super rich or important and you wanted to make sure you had a great afterlife. You'd go through this process called mummification. Here's what they did. They said special prayers, removed all your organs except your heart because they believed it was super important. Then, they did something a bit weird. They pulled your brain out through your nose. After that, they used a special salt to dry out your body. They filled your chest with linens and straw to give you a good shape, wrapped you up like a mummy, and placed you in a fancy box called a casket. It might sound a bit strange, but they believed it was all for a grand afterlife. So, the mummy business was a fancy and kind of gruesome thing, but they did it to make sure they had an amazing afterlife. It's another example of how ancient Egyptians had their unique ways of doing things. Sacrifices for the pharaoh. Now, here's a dark secret. They had something called retainer sacrifices. This means they would actually murder people, healthy ones, so they could serve the pharaoh in the afterlife. Some kings had as many as 500 sacrifices. Imagine you're living your life, and suddenly you're chosen to be a sacrifice for the pharaoh. These were often people like servants, guards, and sometimes even family members. They believed it was an honor to serve the pharaoh even in the afterlife, so they did these shocking sacrifices. It's a chilling part of history, and it's tough for us to grasp today. But in ancient Egypt, they saw the pharaoh as something close to a god, and they did what they thought was necessary to ensure a grand afterlife. King Tut's mysterious phallus. Here's a really strange mystery. When they found King Tut's mummy, it had an erect... Well, you know what? Nobody's sure why it was like that, and there are some pretty wild theories. Some people even wonder if it's really King Tut's at all. It's a really strange part of history that often gets overlooked. Mummified pets. Alright, time to uncover something heartwarming. The ancient Egyptians' love for their pets. They loved their animals so much that they did something really special when they passed away. If a pet passed away before their owner, the Egyptians would mummify the pet and place it in the owner's tomb. But what if the owner went first? Well, in those cases, they'd leave instructions to take care of the pet until it passed away. Once it did, they'd mummify it and put it in the same tomb. But here's the really touching part. If there were no instructions, they'd sometimes even choose to say goodbye to their beloved pet early. They'd mummify the pet so they could be together in the afterlife. It's a sign of deep love for their animals. However, it's a beautiful testament to the strong bond between people and their pets in ancient Egypt. Egyptian birth control. Okay, this one's a bit gross. Ancient Egyptians had their own way of practicing family planning. Egyptian women had a choice when it came to birth control. They could use honey or a mixture of tree leaves and, well, crocodile dung. Yes, you heard that correctly, dung. They had to put these things inside themselves to avoid having babies. Now guys, don't think you're off the hook. Men had their own way of preventing kids. They had to rub onion juice on a certain part of their body. These methods might sound pretty disgusting, but it shows that they were trying their best to plan their families. It's not the most pleasant topic, but it's a reminder that people in ancient Egypt were looking for ways to control their family size. Gender fluidity. Okay folks, we're wrapping up with something quite different. In ancient Egypt, they had a unique perspective on gender. It's not what you might expect, so let's take a look. The ancient Egyptians believed that gender could change in the afterlife. That's pretty cool, right? They thought that even gods could have features like beards on goddesses. It's like they believed that gender could be a bit more flexible than what we usually think today. Their ideas were quite different from what we're used to. It's a fascinating glimpse into how ancient Egyptians saw the world, especially when it came to something as complex as gender. So there you have it. 10 filthy secrets of ancient Egypt. It's a fascinating, sometimes weird, and occasionally dark side of history. If you want to learn more, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more disturbing history mysteries.